Good morning. My name is Isabella Luciano, and this is Music Preservation. As stated in the College Board Stimulus, Serenidad and Latinidad in the 1900s by Deborah Paredes, she states, once inside the rectangular room, after you've paid the $1 donation, you're immediately surrounded by the soft sounds of Selena's music piped in on the intercom system and by an eclectic range of memorabilia from Selena's life and career. Paredes discusses how a museum created based off of Selena's life, accomplishments, memories, and ideas helps establish who she is as a person. Here in this picture from the Texas Commission, we can see the museum and all the artifacts that make up Selena's life. These artifacts include pictures of Selena, jewelry she used to wear, and makeup she used to use. Just like these artifacts representing Selena's life, music does the same by representing the culture and identity of Spanish-speaking countries. My research question is, to what extent does the preservation of music in Spanish-speaking countries positively impact the representation of their cultural heritage? Preserving music has a positive impact on the representation of cultural heritage in Spanish-speaking countries. One of the main benefits that comes from the preservation of Spanish music is the cultural connection between different regions and people. For example, Christian Clough states in Latin American and Caribbean urban development that the Latin American and Caribbean diaspora from North America and Europe helps reinforce the transnational connection between urban spaces here and there. What he means by this is that as people are forced to migrate from their homeland to different countries, they bring parts of their culture with them for these places to be able to adapt and inherit to new cultures and traditions. Just like this, Paulo Palomino mentions in The Invention of Latin American Music Transnational History that by valorizing old and new erudite, popular native, and diasporic music, the characters in his book were based off of the 1930s transnational field of Latin American musicology. This is important because it explains how music was important back in the 1930s and still is to this day. As old and new traditions are passed on around the world, old traditions continue to have an impact and influence throughout present time, which shows how music allows for a cultural connection and exchange that can't be found in any other way. Spanish music is also beneficial when it comes to cultural resistance, ancestry, and heritage. Mark Brill mentions in his book that the Spanish conquistadors considered Aztec and Inca music as barbaric and uncivilized because they believed that their views and standards on music were the only correct ones. Since the Latins judged all other cultures for their styles of music, this caused for cultural resistance between the Latins and other countries, since all other music was seen as bad and only their music was seen as good. Just like this, music isn't just used as a form of cultural resistance, but it is used as a way for people to remember their ancestry and heritage. Alejandro Castaño states in The Role of the Drum Set in History and Development of Afro-Cuban Music that the clave patterns used today are descendants of the clave patterns from African ancestry of sacred and secular music. The clave patterns are a series of Cuban beats and rhythms put together from African ancestry, which shows where Cuban culture is now born from. Just like the Cuban clave, there are other styles of music that hold a lot of ancestry. Another example of this would be the Puerto Rican bamba. Bamba, the sound of Puerto Rico's African heritage by Vimari Colon Leon, states how important it is for students to study the bamba because it sets them apart from others. They are able to learn about the forms of folk music that descend from the bamba and they can take a glimpse into the life and traditions of Puerto Rico. Here, we can see the high impact levels that the Puerto Rican bamba has on heritage, colonial rule, communities, cultural resistance, and identity. This high impact level comes from the fact that the bamba brings so much ancestry and heritage back into people's lives. Going back to the Cuban clave, here we have in variation 1, it shows the original rumba clave beat with the bell added in, and in variation 2, also the original rumba clave beat with the bell removed. This shows how music is more than just sound. The sound between these two variations has changed, but the impact that it has on the culture and representation in Cuba stayed the same. Last but not least, music helps preserve the national identity of Spanish-speaking countries through expression and storytelling. Mark Brill mentions in Music in Latin America and the Caribbean music is the expression of people's lives. It is the conduit for humans to express themselves, to identify themselves and to others who they truly are, and to find a sense of belonging. The sense of belonging that music brings into people's lives is like no other, and is a very valuable aspect of life. Esteban Buch also mentions that the state vocal music is the most lasting and influential product of ideological constructions in the voice of a unified nation. By this, he means that the specific music of a country, like their national anthems, help bring together the people as one and for them to be able to remember everything they stand for and believe in. Just like this, music is also used as a way of storytelling in a fun and creative way. Sellers presents an analysis of the intersections between social class and race among bachata producers and listeners as a background for the study of music in the individual and collective identity of people. This proves how important the bachata was for these people because it allowed them to connect with their culture and land on an extremely deep level. This is so important because without music preservation, there's a potential that the history and memories, ideas, and culture could be completely forgotten throughout Spanish-speaking countries. Thank you.
All right, 2 questions for you. Ready? What evidence did you gather that you didn't use, and why did you choose not to use it?
To be honest, throughout my research process, I ended up using all the evidence that I found because while I was researching, I actually found it extremely difficult to find enough sufficient sources. So the ones that I did use, I found that they were powerful and very impactful for my whole presentation.
And what advice would you have for somebody who considers this as a topic in the future?
The advice that I would have for someone considering this topic in the future is to study different styles of music. Here I mentioned the Cuban, clave, and the bamba from Puerto Rico, but there are different other styles that come from many other Spanish-speaking countries that could be taken into a deeper dive and could be done more research on.